it's always important to remember that we are all wired differently. And when we become one, we become a totally different unit as well. So how do we navigate becoming that new unit together?
Welcome to the Connect 2 Marriage Podcast by Focus on the Family, Singapore. Well, in each episode of the Connect 2 podcast, we tackle questions that couples ask about marriage, communication and conflict, and of course, much, much more. So we hope you'll keep tuning in to learn with us and to grow closer, deeper, and stronger in your marriage. Now, marriage is a wonderful journey, but it can also be challenging, and that's where healthy boundaries come in. And in this episode, we'll explore why they matter and what exactly they are. So with us today, we actually have our guests, Hong Xin and Noelle, who have been married for 9 years and are parents of 2 boys. They actually met on their first job and interestingly changed industries together, although not with the same company. And what's interesting about them is that they are your typical Singaporean couple. Their proposal didn't involve an HDB flat, but their wedding did kind of revolve around, housing arrangements. And they actually stayed with their in-laws immediately after their wedding for about 6 to 7 years and shuffling between both sides of parents. And so we're going to find out a little bit more about them as well on that, because I'm sure boundaries come in as well over there. And they currently also serve in their community's marriage preparation program. So welcome, Hong Xin, welcome, Noelle.
Thank you, Jo.
Hi.
Maybe just get you to introduce each other like as husband and wife. What's one thing that you still appreciate about why you married each other?
Okay, maybe I'll go first. Hong Xin, I love Hong Xin for being very adventurous. I'm someone who is actually very stuck on staying within my comfort zone. So being Hong Xin has actually helped me to grow a lot personally as well as for us as a couple. For us, our wedding theme was actually about beginning a new journey. And I think truly it has been an adventurous journey with him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I can sense the differences there already. Yes, Hong Xin,
So for Noelle, she has always been very patient, and I really love her for that, because as you can see, I'm not very patient. And she handles the kids very well. I mean, that's of course not something that I look for when I married her, but it comes as a bonus when we have boys, because boys being boys are really very, very tough. So she always has the patience, and I'm always the one that the neighbors all hear my voice. So I'm very appreciative for her for that. And not just the boys, sometimes they always say that the man is also one part of the boys, right? We gang on together and so on. So she has been very patient with the 3 of us in the family.
But to just get down onto today's topic on boundaries, we know that healthy boundaries are crucial for actually any kind of relationship, and particularly marriage, because both of you are sharing space together, you're sharing lives together. And I think oftentimes when we think about how the wedding brings 2 persons together and they become one, we always say 2 become one, right? It somehow gives this sense of we're not supposed to have any boundaries between the 2 of us. We are now one unit, and we share everything. And so maybe if to start, like, why the need even for boundaries in marriage?
For all of us, we're all wired differently. We will have different wants, different desires, different needs, and different preferences. Maybe just to share an example, just something as simple as our diet, right? For Hong Xin, he loves spicy food. He loves mala xiang guo. I'm someone who cannot take the ma in the mala xiang guo, so I never eat that. So that boundary is one that he sets, in which he decides that he will only eat mala xiang guo when he's with his friends, people who love mala xiang guo and they enjoy it together.
You can eat with me. My husband also does not like the ma. Okay. All right, so it's kind of like managing different preferences, different styles, if you might say.
Yes.
How does that actually play out in your marriage, really?
For example, if we are having any disagreements, our style of managing disagreements naturally is quite different. So for Hong Xin, he actually needs just to be left alone for that night, for example, and he just needs to be able to sleep it off, for example, before he can become rational and logical, to be able to actually have a good discussion about whatever we have disagreed on. Whereas for me, at the start, I'm the kind that, I want to resolve it within that day. Yeah. So that's something that we have learned about each other. I actually set that boundary where I know, okay, he needs that space. I will just approach him the next day. I can wait and it will be better.
I like how you put it, when he's more rational and logical. That's quite important. Actually, it sounds like while boundaries are there to respect or appreciate each other's differences, it also sounds quite a bit of a survival necessity so that we are not at each other's throats all the time. What types of boundaries should a couple be aware of in marriage?
The expectation is something that we need to be aligned also. The advent of social media, etc., there's a lot of comparison. Expectations must be, made that we don't compare, be it exes, which you don't have. I'm a first boyfriend. I previously had a few exes. So it's also not just exes, but also social media, what we see on social media, the stories that we read, etc. So it's managing expectations and knowing that the woman that you married is the one that you've never made a mistake for.
So it starts with expectations.
Yes.
Were boundaries something that you all talked about before you got married? Is it something that I know you're involved in your community's marriage preparation program? Is it something critical or crucial for couples to understand?
Within our marriage, at the start, maybe we didn't really discuss very much about it, but it became a tool that we realized worked for us, and kind of organically we realized that it's important to set boundaries and also to use it, and it helps us to grow.
Maybe share a little bit about housing arrangement when you got married, because we do encounter, this is a typical Singaporean couple, right, where housing can be an issue. And of course, some couples would choose to wait till their flat is ready. Others, the wait is too long, particularly maybe COVID extended that wait. So they just decide to jump into it. And I think this arrangement of having to stay at one of your in-laws, but you also shuffled between the two, how did that actually work? Was it something you discussed, or it was only when the situation presented itself? And what were some arrangements that you made to ensure that you maintain your sanity? And I don't know, how's your relationship with your in-laws? How do you maintain, that good relationship with everybody as well as each other?
Marriage is one of the most rewarding things in life. Yet, navigating marriage as newlyweds or an engaged couple can sometimes get overwhelming. Whether it's managing expectations of the in-laws, getting a good grasp of your family finances, or establishing good habits of communication and healthy conflict. Focus on the Family Singapore's marriage preparation program aims to help you build a solid foundation in the early years and prepare you for the adventure of your life. Visit family.org.sg/C2 Marriage Prep for more information today.
I think we are very blessed that our parents actually quite relatively tolerant of us in some way, and quite good. We started the building of a relationship way before we got married. When we first got together, we already introduced our parents shortly after we got together. So that actually from there we built out the relationship. And then they kind of understand us. It's not just about our good side, but also our bad side. So of course that actually was a bit more evident when we stayed with our in-laws, but they were very understanding at the same time. And then because also of their understanding, so we had to be understanding, especially when we are staying with them, right? We kind of burden them in some way or another. So at the boundaries itself, if I'm staying at her parents' place, if there's any conflict, she'll be the one resolving with her parents, and then vice versa for my side. So at least the son or the daughter looks at their own parents instead of the other way around.
True. And that was something that you discussed, or was it a situation that brought it out into the open?
Yeah, so that was actually something we already discussed before we moved in. And even for the arrangement itself, it was a way of setting boundaries because we wanted to actually be able to spend time with both sides. So it was telling his parents, because actually we're staying with my parents for majority of the time, from Mondays to Fridays, and then on Saturdays we would be at his parents' place. So we wanted to give them enough time as well with us. It wouldn't be like, something like the son totally moving out and then staying with the in-laws.
Was that tough? Like, I know the kids came while you were still with in-laws, or did that actually help?
I think that helped quite a bit. I stayed with my in-laws for 2 years before the baby came along, and I think that helped because the grandparents really love the kids.
And also that will allow both sides of the grandparents to actually really enjoy. They have the joy of having the grandkids with them. And at the same time, like for my parents, if they were taking care of the kid from Monday to Friday, for example, it can be quite taxing for the seniors. Then they have that break on Saturday and Sunday.
It sounds like both of you actually had the benefit or advantage of having pretty good parents who are not like your overbearing, interfering in-laws or hard to manage. They sound pretty mature and wholesome and like with healthy boundaries of their own. But what are some pitfalls to look out for? Because I guess this arrangement may not work for every couple.
The grandparents have to recognize that parents have the final say, and as much as possible, we also use evidence-based parenting, with reference books, etc.
Oh, so you tell your parents that, the research shows this? Is it like that?
Yes.
No, we actually bring it to them. I say, hey, we quote this book or this website, etc. And to tell them, hey, this is the way to parent. That's our style, and we believe this is the way to go, lah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you're actually quite proactive in kind of sharing,
Yes.
your learnings and in a way kind of sharing with them what approach you like.
Yes.
Yes, because as much as both sides' parents have been very helpful and really just great grandparents, but there's definitely going to be differences in parenting styles and our preferences for how we raise our kids. So, for example, maybe you want to share about TV. Screen time.
I just want to caveat that definitely there are arguments about the differences. Not say there's no rosy picture here. We've gone through a few arguments and etc.
Arguments between both of you are between like
The-
you
the
and grandparents.
and
usually I think both of us are aligned. I mean, if the parents or the husband and wife are not aligned, then how are we going to stay together to fight the war, right?
Okay, so the husband and wife must be the united front.
Yes.
But the rule or the wisdom is that it would be the spouse to deal with his or her own parents.
Yes.
Okay, and not that you deal with your in-laws.
Yeah, at least in front of the parents, it must be seen as united, right? So I made the example. She wanted me to raise out on TV. My mom is very liberal on letting the kids have TV, and but we read on evidence that actually exposing kids below 3 or 5 years old is actually not very good. So we actually prevent our kids from having screen time until they were like 4 or 5 years old, and that was a bit of conflict because my mom thought that letting the kids watch TV will be very educational at a young age. Which we totally disagree. Always to keep reminding her and of what our values and what we believe. Somehow she does listen, thankfully.
I guess it depends on what you watch too. But I can imagine some grandparents, like you said, fatigue, right? Earlier on, they would just resort to putting the kid in front of the screen because that just gives them some relief for a while.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, because Noelle's parents were the primary caregiver and both of them were retired around the same time. And so when the kids were born, they were both retired, so they could actually take turns
Wow, the best
to take
childcare.
care. Yeah. So when our second kid was nearing 18 months, they was like, hey, please, I cannot take it anymore. We had to send to childcare, and we did that.
Oh, okay.
So it's only after 18 months that we sent to preschool. Then they give them a bit of relief. At least they don't see the kid for the whole day. Yeah.
It sounds like, having a clear set of boundaries and communicating about them, even if there are changes to them, it really helps everybody all around be more sane. Maybe you can talk a little about, are there any physical boundaries that couples should be aware of?
I think physical boundaries with friends of the opposite sex. I think that's quite important that we need to have that barrier. Classic example would be about men or women working late and being too close to a colleague of opposite sex and so on. That must be very clear boundaries. And also for me and her, when we go out with friends of the opposite sex, we keep each other very updated. Where we go, who are we going out with, and what are the contents that we spoke and so on. That kind of physical boundaries must be there, and the trust must be built upon. We are out there as friends, then nothing more than that.
Were any of these physical boundaries, did they change when you got married? Because I know you guys met at the same workplace, right? Actually, some people, when they meet at the workplace, then they kind of have to keep their relationship secret or hidden. How was that like for you guys? And did some of these boundaries have to change when you got married?
Okay, I don't think we really kept it secret, when we were working together, so didn't really change.
Shortly after we got together, maybe half a year or a year, she left the company, and not because of the relationship, but she chose to pursue a career in another company. Everything was fine. I mean, thankfully the workplace was quite acceptable. Actually, somehow I was wondering, do they work for SDU, where they promote couples, and they were encouraging about, about singles going out and so on. Yeah.
And we get this question sometimes where, husband and wife, they one spouse is all right with the other one going out with a friend or colleagues of the opposite sex, and maybe even alone because they say that it's just a work lunch, or I'm just giving you a ride, it's on the way, it's for convenience. But the other spouse may not be too happy about it or finds that it is an issue. When there's such a difference, who do we default to, or whose opinion matters more?
I have to admit that I'm the one always going out with the opposite sex and always alone sometimes. Like I said, it's really Noelle's grace that she allowed it to happen, because these friends have been with me for over 10 years, and it's really just purely catching up. And it's really her trust in me, and also vice versa, that can allow that to happen. To me, as long as you're accountable and you know what you're doing, I think that's really fine.
So what does this accountability look like? I mean, for couples who aren't sure, exactly, I know you mentioned that you share with one another.
Yes.
What exactly needs to be shared?
Okay, so actually he has a calendar where he puts in all his appointments. So at any one time I can see,
Even when he goes out with catch up for friends? with
Yes,
friends?
yes. So I know when he's going to meet someone, and then when he comes back, he even shares about what they talk about. So I think for Hong Xin, he's a very honest person. So this is something that I like about him even before we got married. So he has always been this honest, and he will always be very open and transparent about what he does.
All right, so it sounds like the really important thing to remember is that if we want to feel safe in our marriage, safe with one another, to protect in a way the trust that is necessary as a foundation of marriage, we do need to set some guidelines or rules or communicate some expectations of behavior and how we'll interact, as husband and wife, and even interact with people around us like in-laws. Now, in each podcast, we actually address a frequently asked question that couples have about marriage, and today's question is about boundaries. So today's question is this: my husband and I agreed that whenever he needs to have lunch with a female co-worker or business associate, he give me a heads up via text. So you can imagine how upset I was when one day he didn't tell me anything, and just so happened my good friend saw him with his colleague. He explained that he forgot and will be more careful in future. Should I take his word for it?
So I think firstly, when we talk about such things, the husband actually explained that, he forgot about it. So the thing is, we need to learn to differentiate between when a boundary was willfully transgressed or whether it was accidentally forgotten. From there, then we know, the real intention. Thereafter, I think for the person who actually transgressed the boundary, they do need to actively seek forgiveness and restoration after it has been transgressed and, the hurt has ensued, because naturally you would be hurt by what has happened because you expected something. And then from there, we work at restoring the boundary too, or even updating it to suit our current needs. So in this case, if it's something that, he can easily forget, like, having to text, for us, I would recommend putting it in the calendar. Yes, because for both of us, we know that we tend to be forgetful about things.
Right,
so that's when we actually chose, we put it in the calendar. You don't have to actually actively remember to go and text.
Right, and it kind of demonstrates that you have nothing to hide.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe, Hong Xin, if I can ask you, right, this thing about, since it was the husband that so-called transgressed the boundary, what does this seeking forgiveness and look like? Because, my husband always likes to say that, for the guy, it's very easy. Husbands, we just say sorry and then we move on. But, it's never satisfying for the wife.
The intent must be right in the first place. If you're really, really forgetful, if the intent is right, how you put it across will be right also. So if you're really out to cheat, then it's very easy for women as a sixth sense or whatsoever, right? They can easily detect it. Unless you're really a good actor. So I think being honest and truthfully, your wife would really know you. If I say I'm forgetful, she'll know I'm really forgetful because
he is indeed.
Yeah, we are both very forgetful. So I think as long as you are sincere and you are truthful, I think the wife will be understanding.
So a lot of it is really also learning to have a deeper understanding of our spouse's heart and intent. This is great. And I hope today, we really learned something about why the need for boundaries, and that boundaries are actually a good thing, not necessarily contrary or contradicting to two becoming one, but in fact quite necessary. And so maybe if I can get any last words from both of you, maybe for the wives and the husbands respectively.
It's important to always, as with all marriages, it's always important to remember that we are all wired differently. And when we become one, we become a totally different unit as well. So how do we navigate becoming that new unit together? I think boundaries actually it's a tool to help us to navigate this new journey. It helps us to grow in understanding of each other as well, because when you want to set a boundary, you actually need to be very self-aware of yourself and also of your couple, be aware of your couple. So you learn to grow in terms of your own self-awareness as well as your awareness of what your husband is like or your wife is like. It's actually very fruitful.
To me, it's like I mentioned earlier, it's about expectations. So it's really aligning your expectations and to discuss and to align the expectations for the both of us, or for the married couple, to be able to move ahead.
Well, at the end of each podcast, we always end up with a couple challenge so that couples who are listening in together can go and do something with your spouse, or if your spouse is not listening with you, you can share about this podcast and still do this couple challenge. So today's couple challenge is to take 5 minutes to share with each other how healthy you think your boundaries in your marriage are. We've been talking about how there is a need for boundaries, not that we should be too dependent or enmeshed in our marriage, husband and wife, but we don't also want to be so independent and indifferent that we don't consider how different we are from our spouse and respecting that space. So take 5 minutes to just have a quick evaluation of how healthy are your boundaries in marriage. So with that, we'll come back in the next episode to hear more from Hong Xin and Noelle about how to go about setting some of these boundaries. So we hope that this podcast has has really given you some inspiration, some tools as to how to take your relationship to greater heights. And we hope you've enjoyed it. And if you're looking out for more resources to grow your marriage, do visit our website at family.org.sg to browse our articles or to check out our upcoming events as well as marriage programs. If you have not already followed or subscribed to our Connect to podcast, please do so, and also share this with a friend who may benefit from it. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, take care of yourself and your spouse.